Hello, everyone. This is the Product and Design weekly call for the Static Site Editor group. It is October 19th, and let's dive right in with the design section. Michael, if you want to just start reviewing your notes.
Okay, so let me prefix that with the UX research stuff. So the past 2 days, I just summarized the notes and I added that into the issue, and it's in Dovetail. It hasn't been reviewed by anyone yet, so any feedback on that would be good. So based off of that, I started thinking about like the next steps for the static site editor, and one of those things that we've been talking about is allowing multiple edits. So this is the scenario of not really diving into multiple pages edit yet, but more like, oh, I need to make multiple changes to the same file. And at the moment, you can't really do that in the static site editor. And we've been exploring two different flows. One flow where we enter from the handbook, and then you go into the static site editor, and then you select the right merge request. And the other flow that we were testing was like starting from the merge request page itself and then going to static site editor and making a change. From the solution validation, I feel like starting from the existing merge request page seems like a flow that resonated better with people who are more used to the GitLab flow of working. So where you would have most of your feedback and suggestions coming from the merge request page. So jumping off from that page felt more natural, even with the flow. And there's already a lot of things in place that we can just jump onto to like to tackle to like have like an iterative way to allow people to make multiple commits onto the same page. And I just wanted to bring that up if we should create an issue for this so that we can start tracking it and discussing it properly better than this thing. But that was kind of like the main thing I saw from a product way, where it kind of makes sense if we want to like tackle like adding a commit message, handling multiple commits to one file, building that foundation, and then like retackling how we might allow that from the flow of handbook to static site editor, and then switching the merge requests or the spot you're planning to save to.
So I have an old issue that I made I agree, first of all. I saw the same theme in the feedback, and I think we knew we were going to need to be able to pick up this flow. I agree with you on the familiarity with that prototype that you had, where you selected it from the meatball menu and the merge request on the source file. I don't think that it's I think it's a great MVC. It's a good iteration towards giving people that path. I do have a concern that it's too many choices in there. It's too many editors, but I know that this is also something we're thinking about growing with integrations and stuff too. Like we have the Gitpod integration. Similarly, we might have other editors or other entry points into IDEs or whatever. So it's possible that as that scales, we negate that concern by actually having even more choices. And then it just becomes, how can we be so specific about our feature that we know that people can be intentional about picking it and they know what to expect. And I think that is my other concern. What do we call it in that menu? I know you were testing some different words. We can keep iterating on that, but none of these are unsolvable problems. I'm just sharing. These are the things we probably need to solve. I had an issue back before when I was just thinking through user stories, and this I think falls into the same ballpark. So we can reuse this issue I linked in the agenda for, I think I called it add additional changes to an existing merge request. And there's like no description, obviously no real requirements. So we can build out from there and maybe use that to track changes and designs and iterations there. but I'm supportive of that being another iteration that we move towards. I think the only other candidate in my mind would be I don't think we're ready for multiple pages. So this does make the most sense. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, let me add some words to that later today. And I'll...
Sure.
So next point is another point that came up in solution validation was like this thing that has been something we've been aware of, but we haven't really tackled yet. Now that we got the title and the description from the MR page over to the static site editor, the next big thing I see is like the assignee, because that's kind of an obstacle in publishing, because within the handbook scenario, you can't just deploy your change directly to the main branch. You have to get someone to merge it for you, or in most cases, there are some people who can just merge directly, but in most people's scenario, you need someone to review it first. And there is an issue that was created a few months ago called suggesting an assignee to merge requests to the static site editor. And I think I'm going to take some of these points that are raised here, as in like, thank you, Jean, for commenting about a reviewer roulette not being appropriate for the handbook. And I think we have the code owners files as some stuff to look at, like that, or your manager. But I think this is something that we can like look into for the next round of solution validation, like doubling down on like how we might do this better, because I think that would be good for people to not have to stress about, I really want to help out with the engineering side of this document, but I don't have no idea who to ping. So I think this would be really useful to start thinking about from the static site editor standpoint.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught the end or if I did this after I stopped recording, but I had an interesting aside with one of the one solution validation that I was moderating, and this came up, and the friction point was it's very specific to the handbook, but I could imagine at a scale that some of our users may deploy sites, this could come up. Where you have potentially a dozen code owners, and you display those as avatars and names in your selection. But who knows like which one of those is really the one you should assign it to, right? Maybe one of those is the CEO. You don't want to bother that person. You might have one person who is on vacation or something like that, and you're not going to get a response. One interesting idea that came from that back and forth was like, what if you just had like a random button and you let the program decide? Like you just say like assign to any of these code owners, and then we could build out, at first it might be random, then we could iterate, and maybe it like looks at people's GitLab status and then finds somebody that's not like at capacity and then assigns it to them. Or, maybe somebody could manage a list that builds like a tiered preference or something like that. This is all just like hypothetical extensions to code owners in general, but I think this would be a really interesting way to expose it and find some of those use cases.
So that's exactly the scenario that sparked this this point, because I was like, that's a really good idea, and I think that's why I put down. I don't know much about reviewer roulette, because when you said just pick someone at random, that reminded me of the roulette concept, or like the Google like I'm feeling lucky kind of button, and then it's just like auto assigns. But that comment from you, Eric, was the exact thing that sparked
my analog, and I know Derek will like this, was like a character select screen in a fighting game or something like that. Like you're playing, or like you're playing Mario Kart and you don't care which character you pick, you just hit random and it's like, you got it.
And one thing I want to mention too, with respect to, so obviously from an iteration perspective, that's probably the best one, is like random. That seems to be the best one. But another idea, again, getting into solutioning a little bit, but we could also kind of infer a little bit. You mentioned one thing specifically, which is like you could look at their status, which would be a great one. Another one would be we could actually query how many things are they already assigned, and you could kind of rank how many they're assigned, and then you probably like the one with the least amount of assignments would likely be, you know, if that's a good heuristic, that might be a good way. Good way
I
to do
like
it.
that. Yeah.
I'm sure we could come up with other ones too, but again, the more we can infer based off data that exists, I think that increases our chances. I could be wrong too, but that definitely comes to mind.
Yeah. Another interesting side note, and I made this in the doc, but code owners is not available in core. So we really should be thinking about who's going to be using this. And these are now, we're talking about paid customers, and this would be our first feature we build only for paid customers. So we want to make sure that we, you know, make an appropriate split in the logic. We document that appropriately, and we think about the use cases appropriately. Obviously, if you don't have code owners, you may be in that scenario where you're just like it's a smaller project. You can commit to the main branch, or, you know, like everybody has the same permissions. And so this isn't as necessary. And then, you know, you have code owners. So we respect that flow by offering this option in the publish process. Before we go too far down, like hitching our wagon to code owners, we may want to think just about, make that decision intentionally that this is a paid only feature. Just because, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, yeah, I agree with you. We'd have to figure that out. Like if it's by design, it's only a paid for feature or something, but it's not hard to think like through the config file or something, we have, you know, it's predefined, and you kind of already alluded to that earlier, basically. And then code owners would essentially be the override for paid. So it's a way to get both in if that was actually something desired. Code owners would essentially be the override in that scenario or something.
Yeah. So let's think more about that. We can put it all in an issue. Maybe we can explore some options in the design about like what it looks like if it's not there, or what it looks like if it doesn't use code owners versus if it changes at all, if it does. And then, yeah, we'll move forward. I'm not against having a feature that is only available to paid users, by the way. I think if it makes sense architecturally and for the experience to just use code owners, and then that's fine by me.
I don't want to like stick on this too long because it sounds like we're probably moving on, but from a front end implementation standpoint, it would be identical as far as how I'm kind of gut thinking the implementation would be. It'd be on the back end, you either have this config file and it's just passed down, you know, that array of users essentially. And then when you're on the paid tier, that data would still exist, but it's received from a different location, as opposed to that config file would be received from code owners, for example. So I don't know if that changes anything, but I see that as basically from a gut check standpoint being kind of more of a back end determining factor, and then the front end would almost literally have no difference unless we actually wanted to have some other thing to by design differentiate that, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Sounds good. And then my last point is just like my focus for the week. So I'll be spending today and tomorrow kind of like going through the 316 issues just to look at anything that needs design and just reviewing some of the descriptions to make sure that everything's there. And then go through some of the settings, bugs, and CAT spreadsheet that she sent out last week to see what needs design or solution validation, so I can jump on that. So I think I'm playing a little bit of catch up, but yeah, I'll get there by the end of the week.
I'll type this out afterwards, but one thing on that note that I was thinking might really be a big help if you're going through it, if you have time this week, is an audit on the Left Nav and what features are available that we would be able to turn off in the settings. So that's one of the things that we're going to pick up in 13.6. And I was just going to make group and instant at the instance level, the group level, the project level, and which features should be able to be turned off, and which ones can already be turned off, because I know there's some that can. I think that would be a good starting place, because Catherine and I, we talked about this. We had a great meeting. Oh, I thought it was great. I don't want to speak for you, but we had a great meeting last week for like a long time. It was pushing 2 hours talking about all this stuff, and it was really informative to me. But one of the takeaways was when working on the settings, it might be nice to have just like an overall spreadsheet that captures, it sounds ridiculous as I say it, but every setting that's available to every role. That way we can find commonalities and identify ones that might make sense to be set it once and forget it, and it can just kind of be buried in the settings view or something like that. And then also, like, if we can find settings that can be grouped by role, like only an admin needs to do this, or or everybody should be able to have access to this setting. As far as I can tell, and I've asked around a few people, nobody knows of a full audit that's been done. Wouldn't be something that one person would do, but by themselves. But I think an audit of the left-hand nav features would be a good start towards that, like overall spreadsheet of every setting.
For what it's worth, I don't think that's ridiculous, or however you frame that. I think that's a wise idea. And then another thing just kind of jumped to my mind is, it's obviously sounds like a daunting task, but we may be able to leverage automation, right? To just crawl, basically some kind of crawler, some kind of script to, like, if we know where all the places are, we could probably just crawl just the .com page or something, and obviously, I don't know, it might get a little hairy, but that could at least get you a lot further than just manually reading or something. Maybe not enough to see, but.
Yes, I also thought that there might be somewhere in the code base. I don't know how the settings are architected, but if there was some way we could extract, even on a per feature level, like there's a chunk here and a chunk there, and we can bring them all in and then just kind of like clean them up in a spreadsheet, reword them or something like that. That would be helpful. I think I don't know.
So I can take this, since I've already got a list of features in the left-hand nav. I can just do a list of the ones that can be turned off or cannot be turned off.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot. Yeah, you had that list already on the left nav. So all of this is in service for my update. One of the things I'm working on this week is just cleaning up some static site editor issues, refining some issues, and cleaning up some epics that are already done or maybe need to be moved around. And then same thing goes with the settings work. So specifically the ones we're going to be focused on in 13.6, I want to make sure those are good to go. And then there's some others. Those epics are in great shape already. I just want to apply the appropriate labels so that we can get them on a workflow board and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, and did you see Eric Brinkman's epic that was related to the whole toggling situation?
Yeah. Okay. So I think my plan specifically would be to take that one and tweak it, and then in the description put more of like a checklist, and then make sure that all appropriate issues are either linked or created to make sure that we capture the intent for every feature that can't be turned off now but should be able to be turned off. With that, I think it would probably be appropriate to ping whoever the product manager is for each of those features and say, like, hey, we're about to make a change to your settings. Are you okay with it? Kind of thing. But I know for a fact that, based on that epic that you mentioned, there are at least half a dozen existing issues where people are just been meaning to get to this and haven't. So we can just pick up those.
Yeah, and one thing related to that, a lot of those issues kind of do it as a wholesale thing. I don't even know if that's the word for it, but the issue would be like turning off the security and compliance top level item versus, security dashboard and everything underneath. Are there I don't know if this is a question for Michael, but is there like any question around should it be done individually or should it be done like as a whole for a lot of these items that have sub items?
I'd have to dig deeper into which sub items might qualify for that. But my instinct is that the goal is to declutter the left nav entirely. So like if I don't use analytics or if I don't use requirements, I just don't want to see it. And we could maybe move towards a sub item level activation, and so start with this round with the top level and then move towards sub level if people ask for it or if it seems appropriate. I'm trying to think of a scenario specifically where like maybe within a section, within a left nav section, there's sub features that like might be less used or
Yeah,
otherwise
there was only one conflict that I remembered in the past, and I think it was resolved eventually, but that was turning off issues and having labels disappear. That was resolved, and I think it doesn't disappear anymore. But I just don't know if there are any other situations like that where they're kind of grouped together, but they're not necessarily dependent. Like if you turn off, yeah, that's basically the question.
Mm-hmm. I can see there's a big operations section that I don't spend a lot of time in, but like potentially like you want to turn off Kubernetes, but you don't want to turn off error tracking or something like that. Yeah, I think this is where an audit could really help and just try and find those, and maybe we do need to make affordances for some of the bigger sections.
Okay, so I will start that just in my sheet that I had before as a starting point, and then probably we'll expand it for what we were talking about, the audit of kind of all settings, but I'll just start it here.
Awesome, thank you. Not to retread everything I talked about this morning, but for the sake of my updates, my goals for this week are the issue refinement, like I mentioned, documenting our static site editor re-architecture proposal with Enrique, trying to make sure that we have both like a product level pitch and a technical proposal so that we can spread the word about how important this could be and how valuable it could be to more than just our group. I think that is it's very clear that the architecture is going to make it so that the WYSIWYG editor would be a component that other teams would be able to use, and there's a lot of excitement about that. And so I want to make sure that it's very clear, our intention is very clear, so that we can just send out an epic and I don't need to have like a big presentation prepared and all that stuff to go on a roadshow. So I'm going to work with him on getting that written and just keep digging into all the settings and nav research. There's so many videos and articles. I have a window with, oh man, how many tabs now are in this? Like 25 tabs open to just like dig through issues and videos. And one of them's that wonderful UX settings UX playlist. It's got like, I don't know, what's it got, 11 videos now. So that's like a day's worth of watching videos too. This is all great, and I'm gonna keep digging in.
Yeah, the UX settings playlist one, I'm going through all of them and taking notes in Dovetail. So if you want like crib notes to all of them, and that's a good way to see at least the transcription and then maybe watch the parts that you want to double down on. But yeah,
That's
watching
good to
them.
know. Thank you. But yeah, I was watching one today over lunch, and very, very, very interesting discussions. So I will definitely look in Dovetail for the summaries.
Me too.
And
Thanks for that ad.
that's about it for me. Anything else?
Happy birthday.
Oh,
Yes, happy
Thank you, thank you.
birthday. Did you get to do anything? Probably not.
I spent most not today. I mean, I had taken the past couple Mondays off, so I thought another one might be overkill. But this weekend we had a lot of fun. Went to the zoo and did a lot of fun stuff. So a lot of family time. I just had a nice takeout Indian food dinner. So that was my special treat for today. And it was very good.
Oh, that's great.
And now everybody watching will know what I had for dinner. All right, I'll
As
stop the
they
recording.
should.
So
That's
nobody
the
needs to-
real.
yeah.
That's the real journalism.
That's what they're tuning in for. They're really just tuning in for that. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'll stop the recording.